that Fedoseev bishop e3 move in the semi-targe. I don't really believe it, but Andreikin did.
Yeah, but now Wesley got the exact position he wanted. Not that this is bad for Andreikin, but it felt like Andreikin could have punished Wesley's move order by striking in the center.
For sure. And h5 is a very fashionable move in this variation, and as well as everywhere else, by the way.
Yes. And I think that a lot of players, they react immediately. You play h5, I have to play h4. I cannot let you push that pawn and open up your rook on h8. But look at Wesley.
Look at Wesley, yeah.
He says, come at me, bro. Like, what are you doing? You have no pieces over there. So you're spending all this time just to get a fake attack, and I'm just going to continue developing. Maybe I play knight c3 here. Maybe I go rook e1. But there is no actual attack for black.
Not until black gets, let's say, a queen to the h file. That's much easier said than done. Now, one very typical idea here, you mentioned the move rook e1, is to stick a knight on d5 eventually. And if black continues to neglect his development, it's going to be a question of when, rather than whether this sacrifice occurs.
Yes, and then you have to weather a storm because the attack is coming in full force. So for black, it's a question of how to develop your pieces. You can't play a move like b5 right now. You're not developed. So the bishop on f8, not really seeing where that goes. So maybe knight g8 should get out of there first, and maybe it's knight g to e7. That's actually a common idea. He instead closes in his bishop, a classical approach here in the Sicilian. But Danya, it's like he wants his cake and he wants to eat it too.
I literally was about to say that phrase.
Yeah, like he wants the classical Sicilian, but then he's also played h5, h4.
I literally was about to use that exact phrase. I was going to say he wants h5, h4, and he wants the Sicilian, and he wants development. Something's got to give, right? Something's got to give. And what's giving is the fact that he's lacking in development. Now, can Wesley exploit that? So generally, the machinery that you put in motion is rook e1 and knight d5. That's what I was taught. You could also take on c6 and play e5, but that works a lot better when there's a knight on f6. If white does that here, black simply plays d5, and black is very happy to close the center.
Actually, I think you can just put that on the board just so we can just show knight takes c6, pawn to e5. If there were a knight on f6, then black would have to react to this dual threat. But without the knight there, as you're saying, you can just play d5 and close the position down. And look at what Wesley has done. So he does capture and plays knight a4, which is a good idea because you want to play c2 to c4, and you're gaining space to the queen side. And don't discount e5, even if it doesn't attack a knight on f6. Sometimes you actually want your opponent's pawn to go to d5 so you can take over all the dark squares on the queen side.
No, this is responding to Andreikin's sort of weirdly classical kind of ambivalent approach with just a centrally based, positionally minded idea. Knight a4 and c4. Petrosian would be proud of that. The old Soviet masters would be proud of this treatment of the position by Wesley.
Oh, he's playing perfectly because now there's no d5. All of white's pawns and pieces staring at that square. And here bishop g5 is available.
Bishop g5.
You might actually force black to take on g3. And no, Wesley says, brute force is my plan of action. I'm just trying to ruin your pawn structure.
Yes, sticking a needle right in the heart of black's center. And Dmitry, bishop c8 to g4. I mean, this does not look like standard Sicilian development. Look at this position.
I mean, the fact that the bar is at zeros, or even actually says slightly better for black. Okay, I'm going to ignore that for the moment. This looks terrible for black, right? The one thing that Dmitry has going for him is that this pawn is on h4, which means that at some point, if Wesley's not careful, h takes g3, bishop h3, now we can see how the attack rages on. But I don't really believe in the attack. I think that strategically, black's in big trouble. So if he cannot solve his problems tactically, then he is not going to have fun.
And I have a far more mundane concern, which is that black's king cannot stay in the center forever. Eventually, and this might actually happen on the next move, the center is going to open up. So I think Andreikin's top priority here should be to find a haven for his king, whether it's on f8 or on g8. But I might be more concerned about black's king than white's king.
Right. And what's fascinating is h takes g3 was somehow a mistake. You see the eval bar immediately go up quite a bit.
H3 might have been the move.
But I mean, that, like, if you think about it, like, if we just can show this h3, bishop h1. It's like, what did you really gain? You have no attack anymore, zero. And now your pawn structure is getting ruined. You're gonna have the c6 pawn that's gonna be targeted. Like, doesn't that just feel counterintuitive to play h3 here?
It's a sunk cost, right? You've sunk 3 tempi into those pawn moves, and what do you have to show for it? A dried up king side. You're absolutely right. It is very hard to go for that. But now I think black's position is genuinely miserable.
Right, because can't you just take on d6? Not like you want to take with the queen on d6, but otherwise the c6 pawn drops with check. But maybe that's the best thing that Dmitry can do here is like take on d6 with the bishop, and after the check, just move his king and say, I have this attack that I'm putting in air quotes.
No, there's no way he's taking with the queen. No way. No way Dmitry's going for that.
So bishop d6, queen c6 check. The king just going up to e7?
I believe it is. And I don't think Wesley's going to take on c6. I think Wesley's going to make a developing move, such as bishop e3, and say, hey, you know, I can essentially take this pawn at my leisure. Go defend it. Go waste another tempo playing rook b8 to c8.
And what you said is such good coaching advice, honestly, that so many players, they say, ooh, yummy, free pawn with check. Let me grab that. But you're spending time with your queen again. You're not finishing your development. So, well, on the other hand, Dmitry takes with the queen just to defend that pawn. But I think bishop e3, now it's like white's ideas that you were just talking about are even more obvious because black is not developed.
And okay, so the queen is obviously stuck in the middle of an intersection, and it can move to the side. It can move to e6, but Wesley could then even consider pushing his f pawn. And I know that sounds crazy because your king is on g1, but you have a bishop on e3. You have a defensive cocoon around your king. Your minor pieces can handle it. Your pawns can be repurposed as attackers rather than as defenders of the king.
Right.
That's definitely giving Dmitry pause right now.
Oh, for sure. And the best way to avoid getting checkmated is by checkmating your opponent first. So I completely get you. And I think that strategically, and I don't even think I'm stating something that's crazy here. I think strategically, black is lost, right? Like if the status quo continues here, Dmitry's just going to lose this game because he's got split pawns on the queen side that Wesley can easily target. And he hasn't finished his development and his king is in the center. So everything possible is kind of going wrong for Andreikin right now.
Bishop e7, though, that's probably the lesser evil because his priority is still to castle. I think once he does that, it's going to be a little bit easier for him to reapportion his resources and try to defend his queen side. But I mean, you can see the eval bar. It's not lying. I think +2 is a pretty accurate assessment of this position right now.
And if you think about castling here for black, which he might have to do at some point, we'll see c6 could drop.
Castling.
But the thing about this is you played h5, h4, and then you castle. So you have given up on your attack and you gave white all these tempi because Wesley ignored all that stuff. That shows the plan was not properly executed.
Such an instructive moment when Wesley castled, honestly, on move 7. So few people would have done that. And look how it's paid off. He's got these 3 extra tempi on him. Now, queen takes c6. Is it grab time?
I'm worried about bishop d7 at the end of some of those lines. And yeah, that's why, of course, Wesley, you can always count on Wesley to make these improving moves b3. Now you don't have to worry about your b2 pawn. Your knight on a4 is defended in many of these variations where you do take on c6. Now, Wesley is just playing this game marvelously.
Yeah, it's been absolutely exquisite. b3. He's enjoying his life. He's up 3 minutes on the clock. Dmitry Andreikin is in mortal danger here.
And I'm trying to think of a way that Dmitry can even survive. You could put your rook on c8 just to defend this pawn, but it looks such a miserable defense here. Bishop c5 at any moment just to trade queens, and rook d8 instead is giving up this pawn.
Yeah, I remember that meat grinder. That cog is starting to spin. And black's position is starting to come apart at the seams.
But I see why he's doing this. Can we just show queen c6, a queen swap, and bishop d7? Then you cannot take a6 because of bishop b5 hitting both rooks.
Ooh, that's definitely a sleek tactical detail. You also can't drop back to c4 in order to defend your right for the same exact reason. So the challenge for Wesley is indeed to choose the right moment to take on c6. You don't want to overstay your welcome, but you don't want to grab too early either. So maybe rook fe1. Not sure.
I like your idea before of pushing the f pawn, but let's move it one square rather than two. Play f3, then rook f to d1, then maybe bishop f1 to go after the a6 pawn. We can just target that queen side. White's king is never going to be attacked.
Yeah. No, you can, basically disassemble your defensive fort here and repurpose the pieces. The bishop on g2 did a great job as a defender, but now it can function primarily as an attacker of the a6 pawn.
And Wesley, he's taking his time here, which is the smart thing to do because he's really calculating. Queen takes c6. Maybe I don't win the second pawn a6, but it still could be worth it to grab that pawn. Or am I giving Dmitry unnecessary counterplay? And top level GMs, I think you can back me up on this, Danya, they would prefer to be down a pawn with the activity than have even material and then be suffering for squares.
And that's always true. That's true of any grandmaster worth their salt.
Yeah. And so that's why Wesley's taking his time here.
I like f3. I didn't actually realize that white can get the rook to d1. That's sort of the ideal scenario.
Yeah, you have one rook barreling down a pawn, the other rook taking care of the open file. And the rook on b8 has a semi-open line, but that's why b3 was such a good move, because it's a protected pawn. The rook is just staring at nothing in particular. So I like f3 here. And Wesley...
Well, I think he had Ben Feingold over for dinner yesterday, so he's not so sure that Ben might still be in the house.
Ben's in the background. Don't worry, everybody. Fair play checks. We know that the coast is clear there, but Ben has made it sure that Wesley will not be playing that move f3 or f6 anytime soon.
Yeah, and he has sunk 3+ minutes into this move, and now it's a blitz game. And knight a4 to c5. Ooh, okay. I don't know about that.
Yeah, so I don't understand at first why the bar went down so much. I mean, he takes away the d3 square from any trades. He did close the c file, you're right, but he is attacking a6 now. You can't go rook a8 because knight b7 fork. Oh gosh, bishop c8.
Bishop c8, yeah. I mean, he's vacating the g4 square for the knight, though. I think that might be a bonus, a little nice bonus of the move bishop c8.
So rook fd1 first, just to force that queen back to c7.
Exactly.
And that's not like,
much more needs to be said. Ooh, what?
Okay,
it goes back to a4.
Sometimes
knight g4.
Yeah, sometimes we praise top level players for understanding they made a mistake and retreating their piece back to where it came from. This was just odd.
What? And now rook fd1. No, Black does not need to move his queen. Knight takes e3 and queen h6.
What just happened?
Queen h6? Oh my God, Wesley's going to get himself checkmated. What is he doing?
Okay, so he's not mated because he's the f1 square.
Right, but oh, Jesus.
Yeah, now Dmitry, look, you can see him. Look at his posture, right? Before he was like back and...
There's all sorts of shenanigans. a5 and bishop a6.
Oh my gosh, a5 is a sick move.
Bishop takes e7. Black wins. Queen h2 check. King f1. Bishop a6 check. The king is brought out into the open and executed by the queen.
Oh my gosh.
So Dimitri's going to find this move too. You just know it.
I'm just shocked that Wesley gave not just free tempi, right? It's not just like small little moves, but they played a5. He gave his opponent ideas. The knight went to g4, the queen to h6. Oh my goodness.
Oh my lands.
And look at Dmitry. He's giving him the shush finger. He's going full on Dikembe Mutombo. The finger wag is about to happen. Get out of here.
Can't believe it. I mean, what is this turnaround? What is this turnaround?
Wesley somehow doesn't look phased, but you could. Oh, there it is. There's the head shake. Finally, his emotions are finally out there. Like, what did I just do?
But he needs to. I mean, he's not losing, and he needs to keep himself composed, calm himself down, and find the move queen e2, which actually might be the only move, and he just did.
Yeah,
and he just did.
Queen e2 is a move to close the diagonal. You often don't want to put your queen in front of the face of the king because you're thinking about a pin, but the rook's on b8, not on a8. And that's a very important distinction because there is no bishop a6. And with the rook staring each other down the d file, maybe there's going to be enough trades to happen that the white king is going to feel a little bit safer as the game continues here.
Two other important details. If black takes on c5, white's knight recaptures in general and covers the a6 square. The second detail is that if black manages to engineer the move bishop a6, white can intercept it with a rook from c4. So if you play rook a8 here, then I actually think white can take on e7 and then cover bishop a6 with rook c4 and potentially get two pieces for the rook.
Really important point there. And so if you think, Don, you just told me bishop a6 was the winning idea, things have changed here. And I think that now Dmitry, he has a tough decision. Does he keep the rooks on the board? Does he keep the dark square bishops on the board with a move like bishop g5? Not easy for him. So the eval bar, it's not misleading anybody, but the position is very complex.
And Dmitry sinking most of his remaining time into this critical moment. This is, you know, he couldn't have dreamed of getting a queen to h6 and a knight on g4 like this 5 moves ago. And all of a sudden he has this, but how does he capitalize?
He doesn't know. I certainly don't know.
I don't know. Bishop g5, maybe just like a neutral move?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. He could also play a move like rook e8, but I'm a little scared giving up the back rank. So he does play bishop g5, and I would just swap quickly and play rook d1, and now it's a fight once more.
It's easy to forget that that rook is actually d8.
Yeah, you make some other move, but no, he goes with
move.
d1.
Not Wesley so, and the bishop is going to probably move back to g5.
Looks like a reasonable square to go to. And okay, so what's Wesley's plan of infiltrating? There's a rook d6 type of move. I don't know if it's actually helpful. Knight b6 as well. Is there... I'm starting to get worried about this diagonal, right? The queen and the rook on e2 and d1. Like, if I can just somehow move my knight and then get a bishop g4, but it's too slow always.
Yeah, it's hard to actually engineer that. So for Wesley, and he doesn't really have any infiltration squares either. The bishop, of course, covering d8. Black still has in the cards the idea of rook a8, bishop a6. That didn't go anywhere. That's still there.
It's funny. It seems so slow, but it might be hard to stop. And not to mention, there's a very common motif of queen h2, and then bishop jumps knight to h3. Of course, you move your knight out of the way after that. But if that bishop gets to h3, white is dead.
Yeah, white is toasto because bishop takes h3, queen h1 is mate. So Wesley proactively moves his king away to f1. Now, importantly, if knight h2 check and bishop g4, then Wesley can... You know, despite Ben Feingold's presence, I think Wesley will play f3 in that case.
Yeah. I
58 seconds and 1 bar of connection, by the way, for Dima.
Do you think king e1 is about to happen here? Because if king g1, knight g4, we might just see a draw. But if the king goes if the king goes to e1, I mean, that's Wesley saying, I'm going to try to beat you because you are down under a minute.
Yeah, but then Dmitry can still go back to g4, and he will be threatening queen h2. But no, Dmitry goes for the win.
Okay. Hopefully his internet, he's back to 4 bars here.
Yep. Very good.
And his threat, this sounds funny because knight f6 isn't threatening anything directly, but knight f6 followed by bishop h3 is up to crush white's king.
I mean, it's what's called a second order threat. I mean, they're a little bit slower, but they're just as serious. And Wesley doesn't have anything to latch onto on the queen side. And knight b6, okay, bishop b6. What now?
And then knight f6, bishop h3 is the exact plan. So it goes rook d6.
Okay.
So what's his plan after knight f6?
That's the million-dollar question.
So Wesley always has moved f3 when bishop h3 is about to happen.
Oh, because he's bishop g1.
That's huge. That's huge.
Holy, and then there's like bishop e3 anyway.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, my God. That's an incredible pattern. We might actually see that.
That would be crazy. And that would just be winning for black.
But if Wesley goes f3 here, then he drops the g3 pawn, let alone
knight h5.
And the fact that knight h5 is totally devastating.
I mean,
holy smokes.
It says zeros, but I don't believe it. I think Wesley probably has like 1 move that survives and everything else might just lose.
Exactly. And he's down to 45 seconds. This has been a stunning turnaround. He plays f3.
No. Knight h5.
Knight h5.
Knight h5.
Sign the score sheets. Knight f6 to h5, chiseling at the g3 pawn. Devastating. Bishop f2, bishop h3 ends the game immediately.
Oh, because that's beautiful. Because you're after bishop takes bishop on h3, queen h1 check. You don't even take the bishop back because you want that knight fork on g3. We might just see that. Or Wesley, look at him. He's pretty distraught right now. He had the best position you could possibly ask for. Oh, here it comes. Bishop h3.
Bishop h3 ends the game. And Dmitry with 30 seconds to find it. And he doesn't need any of that time.
Oh,
this saw that a mile away.
Donnie, if you showed me that position earlier and said out of 100 games, how many times does Wesley So lose? I would say one. And this just happens to be that one. It's Dmitry Andreikin's day.
Incredible. I cannot believe we just witnessed that. It's only move 31. 10 moves ago, like you said, I wouldn't have possibly believed you that this position would occur in the same game. And Wesley lets his time run out. Dmitry Andreikin, with the black pieces from a miserable position, somehow turns the tables in the span of 5